There's an invisible game being played around you at every moment of your life, and no one ever taught you the rules. It has no board and no pieces you can hold, but it is there every time two people want different things, every time a promise is made, every time you wonder what someone else is about to do. Two minds meet, and without either of them choosing it, a kind of game begins. A silent structure forms in the space between them, with hidden rules and winning moves and traps that can swallow you whole. You've been playing it your entire life, and almost no one ever stops to notice it is there. Tonight, you are going to see it. The hidden architecture beneath trust and betrayal and cooperation, and every quiet decision you make about the people around you. It is called game theory, and once you see it, you will notice it everywhere. In traffic, in love, in the silence between two nations that could end the world and choose every single day not to. So let your shoulders drop, let the day go. You do not need to follow every word. Just let the ideas drift past like lights through a train window, while you sink slowly into the strange and beautiful logic that has been shaping your life all along. And we begin where this whole story began, with the most famous trap ever discovered. Two people, two rooms, and one impossible choice between them. Two prisoners sit in two separate rooms and neither can hear the other breathe. They were arrested together. The police are fairly sure they did it, but not sure enough. So an officer walks into each room, sits down across from each silent figure, and offers the very same quiet deal. It goes like this, my friend. If you betray your partner and your partner stays loyal to you, you walk free tonight, and your partner takes the full sentence, 10 long years. If you both betray each other, you each get 5. But if you both stay silent, if you both hold the line, the police can only pin a small charge on you, and you each get just 1 year, and then you go home. That is the whole game. One choice, stay silent or betray. And the strange thing, the thing that has kept mathematicians awake for 70 years, is what happens when you really think it through. Picture yourself in that room. The metal chair is cold. You do not know what your partner is doing on the other side of the wall. So you reason it out carefully, the way any clever person would. You think, suppose my partner stays silent. Then if I stay silent too, I get 1 year. But if I betray, I walk free, so betraying is better. Then you think, but suppose my partner betrays me. Then if I stay silent, I get the full 10 years, the worst of all. But if I betray too, I only get 5. So betraying is better there as well. And there it is. No matter what your partner does, betraying gives you a lighter sentence. The logic is airtight. So you betray. Here's the quiet horror of it. Your partner sitting in that other room is just as clever as you. They follow the exact same reasoning, step by step, and they reach the exact same conclusion. So they betray too. And so you both betray, and you each get 5 years. Sit with that for a moment. If you had both simply stayed silent, you would each have gotten 1. You would both be home in a year. Together, you would have served 2 years between you. Instead, by each being perfectly, flawlessly rational, by each doing the smart and selfish thing, you have landed on 5 years apiece. 10 years between you, where there could have been 2. You did not make a mistake. That is what makes it so unsettling. Neither of you was foolish. Neither of you was greedy in any obvious way. You both reasoned beautifully, and the reasoning itself led you off the cliff. The trap was not in your thinking. The trap was in the shape of the situation. This little story has a name. The prisoner's dilemma. And it is one of the most important ideas humans have ever found, because that same shape, that same cruel geometry, hides inside so much of life. Think of two countries pouring fortunes into weapons, each one safer if they both stopped, each one afraid to be the only one who does. Think of two companies locked in a price war, both bleeding money, neither able to raise prices first. Think of nations and their factories and the warming air, each one better off if everyone cut back, each one tempted to let the others carry the cost. In all of them, the same quiet machinery is turning. What is best for me alone and what is best for us together are pulling in opposite directions. And cold logic, pure individual logic, keeps choosing the path that leaves everyone worse off. It would be easy to find this bleak, but there is something almost tender hidden inside it too, because the prisoner's dilemma is, in the end, a story about trust, about how much we could gain, all of us, if only we could be sure of one another. The whole tragedy turns on a single missing thing, the inability to look through the wall and know that the other person will hold the line with you. And that tells you something gentle and true. So much of what we have built, every promise, every handshake, every contract, every law, every quiet act of keeping our word, is really just our long human attempt to tear down that wall, to make silence safe, to turn two lonely prisoners into two people who can finally trust each other. Picture them now, those two figures, in their two still rooms in the small hours of the night, each one waiting, each one wondering what the other will choose, and imagine, just imagine, the wall between them growing thin as paper until each can feel somehow that the other will stay. There's a kind of trap that no one builds, that no one wants, and that no single person can ever escape alone. Imagine a wide highway at the end of a long day. Every lane is crawling. You are sitting in traffic watching the brake lights bloom red ahead of you, and you have a thought that everyone around you is having at the very same time. If only I could switch to that other lane, it looks a little faster. But everyone sees the same gap. Everyone has the same idea, and the moment too many cars drift toward the faster lane, it slows until every lane is equally, miserably stuck. And now here's the strange part. No single driver can fix it. If you alone change lanes, you gain nothing. If you alone slow down to let things flow, you only fall behind. Everyone is trapped, and no one can move first. That frozen, stuck-together state has a name. We call it a Nash Equilibrium, after a mathematician named John Nash, who proved something quietly astonishing in the middle of the last century. To understand it, picture any situation where people are each making a choice, and where what happens to you depends not just on what you do, but on what everyone else does too. A Nash equilibrium is a particular kind of standstill. It is a set of choices where no single person can do better by changing their own choice alone, as long as everyone else keeps doing what they are doing. That is the whole heart of it. Not a place where everyone is happy. Not a place that is fair or wise or good. Just a place where no one, acting alone, has any reason to move. A balance point, a resting place for a whole group of decisions, where every person looks at their own situation and thinks, given what everyone else is doing, I might as well stay put. What Nash proved, and what won him a Nobel Prize many years later, is that these resting points almost always exist. In nearly any game you can imagine, with any number of players, there is at least one such balance, at least one arrangement where everyone is doing the best they can, given everyone else. It sounds modest. It is actually profound. It means that the tangle of everyone reacting to everyone else does not spin off into chaos forever. It settles. It finds a place to rest. But here is the quiet ache inside this beautiful idea. The resting place is not always a good one. The traffic jam is a Nash equilibrium. So is a room where everyone is shouting because no one can be heard over the noise. So is a field stripped bare because every farmer grazed one more animal. These are all balances. They are all stable. And they can all be miserable. And still no one can escape by moving alone. This is the deep and slightly sad wisdom that Nash gave us. Some problems in this world are not caused by villains or fools or anyone doing anything wrong. They are caused by the structure itself, by the way each person's best move locks into everyone else's, until the whole thing freezes into a shape that no one chose and no one can break apart on their own. And notice how patient the idea is. It does not ask whether anyone is happy. It does not measure kindness or fairness, or whether the resting place is one we would ever wish for. It asks only one quiet question of each person in turn. Given everything everyone else is doing, would you alone do better by changing? And when the answer, all around the circle, is no, the system has found its balance. The remarkable thing Nash showed is that such an answer almost always exists somewhere. There is nearly always a place where the restless turning of choice and counter-choice finally comes to rest. And it tells you why so many of our hardest problems need something more than good intentions. To leave a bad equilibrium, people usually cannot move one at a time. They have to move together, all at once, by agreement, by trust, sometimes by a gentle nudge from a shared rule that lets everyone change in the same breath. The cars all easing off the gas together, the crowd all lowering their voices at once. The quiet miracle of many people, somehow, choosing to step together out of the trap. There's something humbling in it, lying here in the dark. To know that the universe of human choices has these still points built into it. That underneath all our restless deciding, there are places where everything balances and holds. Some of them are prisons. Some of them, with a little trust, are peace. Picture that highway one more time, the long ribbon of red lights stretching into the dusk. And then picture it loosening, all at once, every car finding its rhythm together, the whole road beginning gently to flow. In 1980, a tournament was held to find the most ruthless strategy in the world, and it was won by kindness. Here's what happened. A scientist named Robert Axelrod sent out an invitation to game theorists all over the world. He asked them each to write a small computer program, a simple set of rules to play that old game of trust and betrayal, the prisoner's dilemma, over and over against other programs. Round after round, each program would choose cooperate and reach toward the other, or defect and betray. Points were scored. Betrayal could win big against a trusting partner. Mutual cooperation earned a steady, gentle reward. And the programs would meet again and again, hundreds of times, remembering everything that came before. The experts sent in their creations. Some were fiendishly clever, some were sneaky, designed to lure a partner into trust and then strike. Some were long and complicated, full of intricate rules for when to turn on the other. Everyone wanted to find the perfect balance of treachery and patience that would crush the competition. And the program that won, that quietly beat every cunning rival, was the simplest one of all. It was 4 lines long. Its name was Tit for Tat. Here's everything it did. On the very first move, it cooperated. It reached out, it offered trust with no proof, no guarantee, just an open hand. And after that, on every single turn, it did one thing. It copied whatever its partner had done the move before. That was the whole strategy. Be kind first, then simply mirror. If you cooperate with me, I will cooperate right back, again and again, gladly. If you betray me, I will betray you once in return. And the moment you return to kindness, so will I, instantly, no grudge held, the slate wiped clean. It is almost unbearably simple, and yet it carried qualities that, when you name them, sound less like a computer program and more like a kind of wisdom. 4 short rules, and inside them, something that looks a great deal like character. It was nice. It never betrayed first. It never threw the opening punch. It always began by assuming the best of the other. It was provocable. It did not let itself be walked over. The instant you betrayed it, it answered clearly and immediately, so that no one could profit by taking advantage of it. It was forgiving. This is the tender part. It punished betrayal exactly once, and then it let it go. The very moment you came back to cooperation, it forgave completely and met you again with an open hand, as if the betrayal had never happened. And it was clear. Anyone playing against it could figure it out in just a few moves. There were no tricks, no hidden traps, nothing to decode. Its honesty was part of its strength because the other programs could see plainly that the way to do well with it was simply to be kind. Think about what that means. In a contest built to reward cunning, the winning move was to be decent, to stand up for yourself, and to forgive. Not because decency is pretty, because it works. Over the long run, across all those repeated meetings, the cooperators found each other and prospered together, while the clever betrayers burned their bridges and were left with no one willing to work with them. Now, a word of honesty, because this matters. Tit for tat is not magic, and it is not unbeatable in every possible world. In later tournaments, with noise and mistakes thrown in, other gentle strategies sometimes did even better, ones that forgave the occasional accidental betrayal rather than spiraling into revenge. The deep lesson was never that one exact program is supreme. The lesson is broader and softer than that. In a world where you will meet the same people again and again, the strategies that thrive tend to be the kind ones, the ones that cooperate, that defend themselves without cruelty, and that forgive. There is something quietly moving in this, lying here in the dark. We so often suspect that the world rewards the cold and the calculating, that nice people finish last. And here in the hard mathematics of it, in a cold tournament of pure logic, the opposite turned out to be true. Kindness, the patient and clear-eyed kind, was not weakness. It was the winning strategy all along. And perhaps that is the gentlest thing the whole tournament has to teach. Not that we should be kind because it is noble, though it is, but that kindness, real kindness, the kind that also stands up for itself and forgives quickly, is not a soft and foolish thing at all. It is robust, it is durable, it survives and it spreads, and it quietly outlasts every clever cruelty thrown against it. Picture that hall of old computers decades ago, their lights blinking softly in the dark, all of them grinding through betrayal and revenge. And in the middle of it, 4 quiet lines of code, offering an open hand and winning. There is a green field that everyone owns, and that is exactly why it dies. Picture it. A wide common pasture, open to all the families in a village. Anyone may bring their animals to graze. The grass is rich, The field is generous, and for a long time it works beautifully. A few cows here, a few sheep there, and the field renews itself each spring, feeding everyone. Now stand in the shoes of one herder. You think the field is doing well. What if I add one more animal to my herd? That one extra cow means more milk, more meat, more for my family. And the cost? The little bit of extra grazing is spread across the whole enormous field, shared by everyone. To you, the gain is large and entirely yours. The cost is tiny and shared by all. So of course you add the cow. But here's the quiet trap. Every other herder is standing in their own shoes, thinking the very same thought. The gain is mine, the cost is everyone's. So they each add an animal too, and then another, and another. Each decision on its own makes perfect sense for the person making it. In the field, the generous green field that fed everyone is grazed down to bare dirt. The grass cannot recover. The soil turns to dust, and now there is nothing for anyone. Every herder, by acting sensibly for themselves, has helped destroy the very thing they all depended on. This is called the tragedy of the commons, a phrase made famous by an ecologist named Garrett Hardin. And the word tragedy is chosen with care. A tragedy, in the old sense, is not a story of villains. It is a story where the ending is built into the beginning, where good people, acting out their natures, are carried toward ruin by the shape of their world. No one here is evil. No single herder is greedy beyond reason. Each is simply doing what makes sense. And together, doing what makes sense, they bring about a disaster that not one of them wanted. What makes it so haunting is how widely it spreads once you learn to see it. A shared fishery, where every boat catches a little more until the fish are gone and the boats sit empty. A river that everyone draws from and pours waste into, each use too small to matter alone, until the water is poisoned for all. A great shared sky, into which countless chimneys release their thin streams of smoke, each one almost nothing, all of them together, changing the very air of the planet. In every case, the pattern is the same. A resource that belongs to everyone, and therefore, in a way, to no one. A benefit that goes to the individual, and a cost that is spread so thin across so many that no single person feels the weight of it. And so the sensible choices of many careful people add up, quietly, to the loss of something irreplaceable. But here is where the story turns, and where it offers a kind of hope, lying here in the quiet. Because the tragedy of the commons is not actually inevitable. For a long time people thought it was, that the only escape was to fence everything off into private property, or to hand control to some strict authority above. But a careful scholar named Elinor Ostrom spent her life looking at real communities, real fishing villages, and mountain pastures and shared forests all over the world. And she found something remarkable. She found commons that had not collapsed, pastures shared for hundreds of years and still green, fisheries managed for generations and still full. And she found that ordinary people, talking to one another, watching one another, making their own rules together, could protect a shared thing without a fence and without a king. They set limits everyone agreed to. They kept an eye on each other, gently. They had ways to settle quarrels and ways to forgive small mistakes, and it worked. For this work, she became the first woman ever to win the Nobel Prize in economics. So the deeper truth is more tender than the gloomy version. The commons does not have to end in dust. It ends in dust only when we cannot see each other, cannot talk to each other, cannot trust each other to share the weight. When we can, the field stays green. There is something worth carrying into sleep in that. Almost everything that matters most to us is in the end a commons. The air, the water, the quiet of a shared street, the trust within a community. None of it survives by everyone simply grabbing what they can. All of it survives by something softer, the slow, patient, deeply human work of caring for what we hold in common. Picture that field one last time, not the bare dirt, but the other ending. The grass tall and moving in the wind, a few animals grazing gently with care, and enough left always for everyone and for the spring that comes after. Two children are fighting over a single orange and they both want all of it. There is only one orange in the house. Both children insist they need it. They argue, they pull, they will not back down. And finally, the tired and reasonable solution arrives. Cut the orange in half. One child takes one half, the other takes the other half, and the fight is over. Fair is fair. But watch what happens next. The first child peels her half, throws the peel in the bin, and eats the fruit inside. The second child does the opposite. He scoops out the fruit and throws it away, because all he wanted was the peel to grate into a cake he was baking. Sit with that for a moment in the quiet. Each child got half an orange, but each child only wanted one part of it. One wanted only the fruit, the other wanted only the peel. If they had simply said out loud what they truly wanted, each could have had the whole of their half, all the fruit for one, all the peel for the other. Twice as much for both of them. The fight was never necessary. The orange was big enough all along. They just never thought to ask what the other one actually needed. This little parable points at one of the most important and most invisible ideas in all of game theory. The difference between a zero-sum game and a game where the pie can grow. A zero-sum game is one where the total is fixed, where every crumb I gain is a crumb you lose. Picture a single pie on a table, already baked, never getting any bigger. Every slice I take is a slice gone from you. Splitting up a fixed pot of money is like this. So is a game of chess, where one player's win is exactly the other's loss. In a true zero-sum world, the other person really is your opponent because there is only so much, and more for me means less for you. But here's the quiet revelation. Most of life is not actually like this. Most of the time, the pie is not fixed at all. The total can grow or shrink depending on how we choose. These are sometimes called non-zero-sum games, and they are everywhere, woven through almost every dealing we have with one another. The two children and the orange. Two countries that could trade, each sending what it has plenty of, each receiving what it lacks, both ending up richer than before. Two people building something together, where cooperation creates value that simply was not there when they stood apart. In all of these, the deep mistake, the costly and very human mistake, is to walk in believing the pie is fixed when it is not. To treat a situation where everyone could gain as if it were a battle where someone must lose. When you believe the orange can only be split, you fight over halves. When you realize the orange has more than one part, you discover that you were never really enemies at all. And the thing that unlocks the larger pie is almost embarrassingly simple. It is asking, it is talking, it is the willingness to look at the other person and wonder, not how do I beat you, but what is it that you actually want? Because so often what I want most and what you want most are not the same thing. And when they are different, there is room quietly for both of us to win. It is strange how rarely we ask. We walk into so many rooms already certain that the other person wants exactly what we want, that we are reaching for the same single thing, and that one of us must lose. We brace for a fight before we have learned whether there is anything to fight over. And the orange sits there on the table the whole time, with its fruit and its peel large enough for both, waiting only for someone to ask the simple question out loud. There's a soft and steadying wisdom in this, worth taking into the dark. We are taught so often to see the world as a contest, to assume that for us to rise, someone else must fall, that life is one fixed pie and we had better grab our slice. And sometimes, yes, that is true. But far more often than we think, the pie can grow. The orange has a peel and a fruit. The deal has room for both of us. The thing we were fighting over was never as scarce as our fear made it seem. Picture those two children now, the arguing finished, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, one peeling away the rind to reach the sweet fruit inside, the other gathering up the bright peel for the cake, each with exactly what they wanted all along. And the strange, gentle surprise on both their faces that there was always enough. A stranger offers you free money, and you turn it down out of pure burning anger. Here's the game, and it is real. It has been played thousands of times with real people and real money in laboratories all over the world. Two people who will never meet and never see each other again. One of them is given a sum of money to divide, let us say $10. This person, the proposer, gets to offer a split. They might offer 5 and 5. They might offer 8 for themselves and 2 for you, anything they like. And then it is your turn, and you have exactly one power. You can say yes, or you can say no. If you say yes, the money is divided just as they proposed, and you both walk away with your shares. But if you say no, something stark happens. Neither of you gets anything at all. The whole sum vanishes. You both go home with empty hands. That is the ultimatum game. One offer, one choice. Take it or destroy it. Now, here's what cold logic says you should do. Suppose the proposer offers you just $1 and keeps 9 for themselves. Pure reason says you should accept, because $1 is better than $0. If you say yes, you are $1 richer. If you say no, you have nothing. A purely rational, money-maximizing creature would take any offer above nothing, even a single cent, because something always beats nothing. But that is not what people do. Across cultures, across countries, across rich players and poor ones, the same thing happens again and again. When the offer is too unfair, when someone offers you $1 or $2 out of 10 and keeps the rest, you refuse. You say no. You throw the money away, gladly, just to make sure that the greedy stranger gets nothing either. You give up real money, money you could have put in your pocket, for the deep satisfaction of refusing to be treated unfairly. And here's the truly fascinating part. People do not even hesitate, mostly. The refusal feels good. It feels right. There's a hot, clean sense of justice in it. You would rather have nothing and know that they got nothing too, than accept a deal that insults you. This drives the coldly logical economist a little mad, because it seems to break the rules of rational self-interest. But it tells us something profound and rather beautiful about what kind of creatures we really are. We do not only care about how much we get, we care deeply about fairness, about being respected, about not being taken for fools. The desire for fairness runs so deep in us that we will pay real money to defend it, even against a stranger we will never see again, even when there is no future, no reputation, nothing practical to gain. Why would evolution build such a thing into us? Here is one leading idea, and it is worth holding gently, because it is a thoughtful theory rather than a settled fact. For almost all of human history, we lived in small groups among the same faces, day after day, year after year. There were no true strangers. Not really. The person you dealt with today, you would deal with again tomorrow, and your children would deal with theirs. In a world like that, letting someone treat you unfairly was dangerous. It marked you as someone who could be pushed around. So a fierce, instinctive refusal to accept a raw deal, even at a cost to yourself, may have protected our ancestors. It said clearly, "You cannot exploit me." And that reputation was worth more than $1. If that is true, then the anger you would feel at a $1 offer is not a flaw in your reasoning at all. It is an ancient and finely tuned instrument, shaped over countless generations, designed to defend your dignity in a world of repeated meetings. It just happens to fire even in the laboratory, even with a stranger, even when the old logic no longer applies. The instinct is older than the situation. There's something quietly affirming in this, lying here in the dark. We are not the cold calculating machines that some theories imagine us to be. Underneath our reason runs something warmer and fiercer, a sense of justice so deep that we will sacrifice for it without a second thought. We would rather be poorer and treated as equals than richer and treated as less. And that, when you think about it, is a rather beautiful thing to find buried in the human heart. Picture that moment now. The offer on the table, the unfair split, and a person quietly shaking their head, letting the money disappear, choosing their own dignity over a handful of coins, and feeling, somewhere deep down, that they have chosen exactly right. Two strangers are told to meet in a vast city on the same day, with no way to talk and no place agreed, and somehow they find each other. Here's the puzzle, and it is a famous one. Imagine you have to meet someone in a huge city, let us say a sprawling place full of streets and stations and squares. You have never spoken to this person about where to go. You cannot call them, cannot text them, cannot send any message at all. You only know that they are out there, also trying to meet you, also with no instructions. You both have to pick a place and a time and simply hope to be in the same spot at the same moment. It sounds impossible. There are thousands of places you could each choose, millions of corners and benches and doorways. The odds of randomly landing on the same one seem hopeless. And yet, when this puzzle is given to real people, something astonishing happens. They find each other far more often than chance could ever explain. They converge, as if guided on the same few places. The man who discovered this was a thinker named Thomas Schelling, and the places where minds quietly meet now carry his name. We call them Schelling Points, or focal points. A Schelling point is a choice that stands out, that feels somehow obvious, not because anyone agreed on it, but because it draws the attention of many minds in the same way. In a great city, people guess at the grandest, most famous landmark, the one everyone has heard of. They guess at the central station, where everyone arrives. They guess at noon, the obvious hour, the middle of the day. And because each person is not really asking, where would I like to go, but rather, where would the other person expect me to go, knowing that they are wondering where I would expect them to go, all those wondering minds spiral inward toward the same bright, obvious answer. That is the deep secret of it. A Schelling point is not about what you want. It is about what you both expect each other to expect. It is a kind of silent agreement reached without a single word, built entirely out of the fact that we can imagine each other's thoughts. You picture them picturing you, and somewhere in that hall of mirrors, a single obvious choice lights up for both of you at once. And once Schelling pointed this out, you begin to see these silent meeting places everywhere in human life. Think of how, without any rule written down, people on a crowded sidewalk in a given country tend to drift to the same side to pass one another. Think of how a round number, a clean and obvious figure, becomes the natural price in a negotiation, or the natural place to set a limit, simply because it stands out as the one everyone can point to. Think of how, when a group must decide something with no time to discuss, they often land on the simplest, most obvious option, the one that feels like the natural choice, precisely because everyone can guess that everyone else will guess it too. So much of how we coordinate quietly, smoothly, without conflict, runs on these focal points. They are the invisible furniture of social life, the obvious answers we reach for together when we cannot stop to talk it through. They let strangers cooperate. They let crowds flow. They let us solve in an instant and without a word problems that would otherwise tangle us in endless negotiation. There is something almost magical in this, worth holding gently in the dark, though it is no magic at all, only the deep human gift of imagining other minds. We are forever modeling one another, picturing what you are picturing, guessing what you're guessing about me. And out of that endless mutual imagining comes a quiet kind of harmony, the ability of two people who have never spoken to reach somehow for the same point in a vast and crowded world. It says something tender about us, that we are not sealed off from one another, each locked alone inside our own head. We carry models of each other within us. We can stand for a moment in another person's mind and ask, what would seem obvious to you? And often, beautifully, the answer we find there is the same answer they are finding in their picture of us. Picture it now. A great city at noon. Two strangers, somewhere among the millions, each pausing, each thinking of the other, each turning their steps toward the one obvious place. And then, against all the odds, two figures arriving at the same bright landmark, in the same quiet moment, having found each other across the whole vast city, without a single word ever spoken. There is a kind of safety that comes only from making yourself unable to back down. For nearly 50 years, two great powers pointed enough weapons at each other to end the world many times over, and the world did not end. This is one of the strangest facts of the last century, and underneath it lies a piece of cold and frightening logic that game theorists came to call mutually assured destruction. To feel why it worked, picture something smaller and more human. Two people standing face to face, each holding the power to destroy the other. If either one strikes first, the other, in the very last moment of their life, will strike back. There is no first blow that ends things cleanly. To attack is to die. And so neither attacks. A terrible trembling peace settles over the two of them, held in place not by friendship, not by trust, but by the certainty that any move toward violence is a move toward your own end. That is the heart of it. The peace did not come from anyone wanting peace. It came from each side knowing, with total certainty, that to start the war was to lose everything. The weapons were never really meant to be used. They were meant to be seen. to make the cost of attack so unthinkably high that no rational mind would ever pay it. And here's the part that turns the whole thing upside down, the part that feels almost backward. In this strange game, being able to defend yourself perfectly could actually make things more dangerous. Think about it slowly. If one side built a perfect shield, a wall that could stop every incoming weapon, then that side could strike first without fear of any answer. And the moment one side can strike without consequence, the fragile balance shatters. The other side, seeing this, grows desperate. So astonishingly, both sides came to prefer a world where each remained completely vulnerable to the other. Vulnerability, shared equally, became the thing that kept everyone alive. It is a logic that can make your head spin, lying here in the dark. Safety through the promise of mutual ruin. Peace resting on the guarantee of catastrophe. The whole arrangement balanced on a knife's edge, where the only thing stopping the end of the world was that everyone understood, perfectly, that there could be no winner. But there is a deep fragility hidden inside this kind of peace, and it is worth naming honestly. A balance like this holds only as long as everyone stays rational, only as long as no one makes a mistake, only as long as a false alarm is never believed, a misread signal never acted upon. History came frighteningly close, more than once, to the whole thing slipping. A flock of birds mistaken for missiles. A training tape mistaken for the real thing. A single officer on a quiet night choosing to wait, to doubt the screens in front of him, and in his doubting, perhaps saving everything. The peace held, but it held by threads and by the steady nerves of ordinary people in extraordinary moments. This is why so many who studied this logic found it not reassuring but deeply unsettling. A peace built on mutual destruction is not the same as a peace built on understanding. It works in its cold way, but it asks the entire world to balance forever on a single, breathless point, where one error, one panic, one failure of nerve could undo it all. It is the difference between two people who have laid down their weapons because they have chosen to trust each other, and two people who have not laid them down at all, but simply found themselves frozen, each unable to move without dying. And yet, lying here in the quiet, there is something almost tender to notice in it too. For all the terror of those weapons, what actually held the peace, night after night, year after year, was a kind of grim restraint. Millions of people went to sleep under that shadow and woke and went about their lives, and the worst did not happen. The logic was monstrous, but somewhere inside it, human beings kept choosing, again and again, in ways large and small, not to end the world. The restraint was real, even if the reasons were cold. Perhaps that is the gentle thread to hold as you drift. That even in the darkest game humans ever devised, even with everything balanced on a razor's edge, the choice made each day by frightened people on both sides was the choice not to strike. The world stayed. The morning came, and it kept coming. Picture them now, those two figures facing each other across a vast and silent distance, neither moving, neither striking, held in a long, frozen stillness, while all around them the ordinary world goes on, unaware, the lights coming on in windows, the children sleeping, the slow turning of another peaceful night. Two cars are speeding straight toward each other, and the first one to turn away is the loser. This is an old and dangerous game, the kind that should never be played, and yet a version of it runs quietly through much of human life. Two drivers aim their cars at one another on a long straight road. Whoever swerves first to avoid the crash is branded the coward. Whoever holds their nerve and stays straight wins and earns the glory. But if neither one swerves, if both refuse to be the coward, then both cars meet in the middle, and both drivers lose everything. Game theorists call this the game of chicken, and its shape is the exact opposite of so many other games. In most traps, the danger is that everyone gives in too easily, that no one will cooperate. Here, the danger is the reverse. The danger is that no one will give in at all. Each player wants to stand firm because standing firm, if the other yields, brings the prize. And so both are tempted toward the one outcome that destroys them both. Now here is the part that turns ordinary logic on its head. The move that has fascinated and frightened strategists for decades. Imagine you are in one of those cars, and imagine, in full view of the other driver, you reach down, pull off your steering wheel, and toss it out the window. You have just thrown away your own ability to swerve. You cannot turn now, even if you want to. You have made yourself helpless, and by making yourself helpless, you have won. Sit with how strange that is. The other driver sees what you have done. They understand instantly that you can no longer turn, that the choice is passed entirely to them. Now only they can prevent the crash. So they swerve. They must. By destroying your own freedom to choose, by burning your own escape, you have forced the other person to be the one who yields. This is the unsettling paradox at the heart of the chicken game. Sometimes, in a contest of nerve, the winning move is to visibly, believably throw away your own options. Power can come not from having more choices, but from convincingly having fewer. The person who can prove they cannot back down gains a strange and terrible kind of strength, because the burden of avoiding disaster falls entirely onto everyone else. You can see echoes of this logic in many corners of life, wherever two sides are locked in a test of will. Intense standoffs where one side tries to seem utterly immovable, utterly committed, precisely so the other side will be the one to give way. In hard bargaining, where tying your own hands, making it impossible for yourself to accept a worse deal, can push the other party to offer a better one. The whole strange art of it is the art of commitment, of making your own retreat impossible, and making sure the other side can see that you have done so. But there is a dark warning folded into this, and honesty requires that it be spoken. The throwing away the steering wheel move only works if you are the only one who does it. If both drivers, both equally clever, both reach down and hurl their steering wheels out the window at the same moment, then no one can swerve. No one can save them. The very tactic that wins when used alone guarantees catastrophe when both sides reach for it together. And in the real world, where pride runs hot and neither side wants to be the coward, that is the terrible risk. Two players, each trying to prove they cannot back down, can drive each other straight into the wall. There is something quietly sobering in this. Lying here in the dark, so much of human conflict is not really about the thing being fought over at all. It is about not wanting to be the one who blinks, about the fear of looking weak. And the chicken game shows with cold clarity how that fear, that refusal to be the first to yield, can carry two reasonable people toward a wreck that neither of them ever wanted. The prize was never worth the crash. But in the heat of the moment, with everyone watching, the crash can come anyway. Perhaps the gentlest wisdom hidden here is the oldest one, that there's a quiet strength too in being the one willing to turn the wheel, in choosing calmly to swerve and to let the other have their small hollow victory, because you understand something they have forgotten in the rush of the game, that arriving safely, in the end, was always the only prize that mattered. Picture that long, straight road now in the last light of evening, the two cars approaching, and then one of them easing gently to the side. The crash that does not happen, the dust settling on an empty road, and both drivers in the end still here, still breathing, carried on into the quiet of the night. Somewhere in a meadow, two deer are performing a calculation neither of them knows they are making. When two stags meet in the breeding season, antlers lowered, they have a choice, though they do not experience it as a choice the way you or I would. They can fight, truly fight, risking terrible injury for the chance to win. Or they can posture, display, test each other, and let one back down without real harm. And across a whole population of these animals, over countless generations, a remarkable thing settles into place. A stable mix of behaviors, a certain proportion that fight fiercely and a certain proportion that hold back. And that mix, once reached, tends to stay, generation after generation, as if the species had quietly agreed on it. This is one of the most beautiful ideas in all of biology, and it came from a thinker named John Maynard Smith, who took the cold mathematics of game theory and found it written, all along, in living flesh. He called it an evolutionarily stable strategy. And to feel what it means, you have to let go of the idea that anyone is choosing anything at all. Imagine a population of creatures, and imagine that the way each one behaves is written at least in part into its very nature, passed down from parent to offspring. Some are born aggressive, ready to fight for everything. Others are born cautious, ready to share or retreat. Now here's the quiet engine of it. Whichever way of being leads to more surviving offspring will, over time, become more common, because those offspring carry the same tendency forward. The behaviors that work spread. The behaviors that fail fade away. No one decides this. It simply happens slowly across the long unfolding of generations. An evolutionarily stable strategy is a way of being that, once most of the population has settled into it, cannot be invaded by any newcomer doing something different. Picture a meadow where every creature plays it cautious, never fighting, always sharing peacefully. Into this gentle world is born a single aggressor, one who takes by force. At first, that aggressor does wonderfully, seizing everything from the peaceful ones who will not fight back. Aggression spreads, but as more and more aggressors appear, they begin to meet each other, and when aggressor meets aggressor, both are savaged in the fighting. Now picture the opposite world. Every creature an aggressor, all of them constantly wounding one another, and into it a single cautious soul who simply steps back from every fight and quietly survives. That caution in a world of fighters suddenly looks very wise. And so neither pure aggression nor pure caution can win the whole field. Each does well only when it is rare, and badly when it is common. The population drifts over generations toward a balance, a particular mix where the aggressive and the cautious do equally well, where no new mutant doing anything different can gain an edge. That balance is the stable strategy. It is a Nash Equilibrium, the same kind of resting point found in human games, but here it is reached not by anyone reasoning, only by the slow, patient sorting of life and death across deep time. What moves me about this, lying here in the dark, is that it means game theory was never just a human invention. The logic of strategy, of cost and benefit, of when to fight and when to yield was being worked out in the bodies of animals for hundreds of millions of years before the first mathematician ever wrote it down. Every stable mix of fierce and gentle, every ratio of bold and shy in a population of creatures is a kind of equation solved not on paper but in blood and instinct and the long arithmetic of survival. It changes how you might see the living world. The fixed proportions you find in nature, some bold and some timid, some that take risks and some that play it safe, are not accidents, and they are not failures of any creature to become perfectly anything. They are solutions. Balances that life has settled into because they hold, because nothing simpler or different does better. The hawk and the dove, the bold and the cautious, are not enemies in some moral story. They are two halves of a single stable answer, woven together by the deep mathematics of life itself. And there is something humbling in realizing how much wisdom is carried in creatures that cannot reason at all. The stag does not know game theory. The bird does not calculate. And yet the way they live, the way their kinds have settled into these careful balances of risk and restraint, embodies a logic so deep that it took human beings with all their mathematics centuries to even begin to describe it. The knowing was in the living, long before it was ever in the thinking. Picture that meadow now, in the soft gray light before dawn, the two stags, antlers lowered, testing each other in the mist. One of them, after a moment, lifting its head and stepping quietly back. No blood, no wound, just an ancient balance, holding once again, as it has held for longer than there have been eyes to see it. A whole crowd watches an emergency unfold, and because so many are watching, no one moves to help. It is one of the strangest and most troubling patterns in human behavior. You might think that the more people who witness someone in trouble, the more likely that person is to be helped. More eyes, more hands, surely more chance of rescue. But again and again, in real life and in careful study, the opposite turns out to be true. The more people present, the less likely any single one of them is to step forward. A person in distress is, in a strange way, often safer with one witness than with 30. Game theorists and psychologists have a name for the shape of this: the volunteer's dilemma, and it describes any situation where a group needs just one person to step up, to bear some cost so that everyone benefits, but where each individual would much rather someone else be the one to do it. To feel it from the inside, imagine a quiet street at night and a cry for help rising from somewhere in the dark. Behind a dozen windows, a dozen people hear it. Each one freezes, listening, and in each mind, very fast and mostly unspoken, the same reasoning unfolds. Someone should help. But there are so many others who must have heard it too. Surely one of them will act. Surely someone has already picked up the phone. And besides, what if I am wrong about what I heard? What if I rush out and look foolish while everyone else stayed sensibly inside? And so, behind every window, a person waits for someone else to be the one. And because everyone is waiting, no one comes. This is the cruel arithmetic of the crowd. The cost of acting, the trouble, the risk, the fear of embarrassment falls entirely on the one who steps forward. But the benefit, the rescue, is shared by everyone, including all those who did nothing. So each person, quite reasonably from their own narrow view, hopes to enjoy the benefit without paying the cost. They hope someone else will volunteer, and the more people there are, the easier it is to believe that surely, surely, it will be one of them. There is a second, quieter force at work too, and it is worth naming gently. In an uncertain moment, when we are not sure what we are seeing, we look to others to tell us how to react. If everyone around us is standing calm and still, we read that stillness as a sign that nothing is truly wrong. But here's the trap. Everyone else is doing the very same thing, looking at us, reading our stillness, concluding that all is well. A whole crowd can talk itself into calm, each person reassured by the apparent calm of the others, while every single one of them is secretly uneasy. The group freezes itself, not through malice, but through a kind of shared and mistaken politeness. What makes this so haunting, lying here in the dark, is that it is not a story about bad people. The dozen behind the windows are not cruel. Each of them, alone, on an empty street, would very likely have rushed to help. It is the presence of the others, the sense that the responsibility is spread thin across many shoulders, that quietly dissolves the will to act. The kindness is still there in each heart. It is just diffused, scattered, waiting for permission that never comes. But there is light in understanding this, and it is the most practical light in all of these ideas. Because once you know the shape of the trap, you can step straight out of it. The spell of the crowd breaks the instant one person acts, and it breaks even faster when that person makes the responsibility land on someone specific. Not a cry to the whole street which lets everyone assume it is meant for someone else, but a word to one person directly. You, in the blue coat, please call for help. The moment the diffuse becomes specific, the moment one named person feels the weight settle on them alone, they almost always act. The crowd's paralysis is real, but it is fragile, and a single clear voice can shatter it. And there is something quietly empowering in carrying that knowledge. To know that if you are ever the one in the crowd, you do not have to wait for the nameless someone else. You can be the one who moves first, and in moving, you free everyone else to move too, because your action gives them the permission they were all silently waiting for. The first person to step forward does not just help. They break the spell for everyone. Perhaps that is the gentle thing to hold as you drift towards sleep. That the paralysis of the crowd is never as strong as it seems, and that it yields always to a single act of courage. One person turning toward the trouble instead of away. One voice naming what is happening out loud. And the whole frozen crowd in that instant thawing into motion, remembering that they wanted to help all along. Picture that quiet street one last time, the cry in the dark, and then a single door opening, a single figure stepping out into the night, and behind them, one by one, the other doors opening too. The whole street coming alive with people who only needed someone to go first. A peacock drags an enormous, useless, dangerous tail through the forest, and that is exactly the point. Think about how strange that tail really is. It is huge, it is heavy. It makes the bird slower, clumsier, easier for a predator to catch. It costs an enormous amount of energy to grow and to carry. By every ordinary measure of survival, that magnificent tail is a terrible idea. And yet generation after generation, peacocks grow them longer and more extravagant, not shorter and more sensible. For a long time this puzzled everyone, because it seemed to run directly against the logic of survival. Why would nature build something so beautifully, wastefully useless? The answer is one of the most elegant ideas in all of biology, and it reaches far beyond peacocks. It is called the theory of costly signaling, sometimes the handicap principle, and at its heart lies a deep truth about honesty. The tail is not useful in spite of being costly. The tail is useful because it is costly. Let me unfold that slowly, because it is beautiful. Imagine you are a peahen, choosing a mate, and what you want, though you do not think of it this way, is a healthy partner, strong and well-fed and free of disease, so that your offspring will inherit those qualities. But health is hidden. You cannot see a bird's immune system or read its genes. You need some outward sign that you can trust, some signal of inner quality that cannot be faked. And here's the genius of the costly tail. A weak, sick, underfed bird simply cannot afford to grow and carry an enormous, gleaming, perfect tail. The cost would break him. Only a truly healthy bird, brimming with vitality, can pay the price of all that useless splendor and still survive, still evade the predators, still thrive. The very wastefulness of the tail is what makes it believable. It is a signal that cannot lie, because the lie would be too expensive to maintain. The handicap is the proof. This is the deep principle. The most trustworthy signals are often the ones that are costly to send, because that cost is exactly what keeps them honest. A signal that anyone could fake cheaply would tell you nothing, but a signal that only the genuinely strong, or genuinely committed, or genuinely able could afford. That signal carries real information, precisely because the weak are priced out of sending it. Once you understand this, you begin to see costly signals woven all through the living world, and through human life as well. The gazelle that, upon spotting a lion, leaps high into the air on all four legs instead of fleeing, seeming to waste precious time. Biologists think this strange display may be an honest signal to the predator, a way of saying, "Look how strong and fast I am. Look how much energy I have to spare. You will never catch me. Do not even bother trying." The very wastefulness of the leap is the message. Only a healthy gazelle could afford it. And in human life, the echoes are everywhere, though here we should tread a little more carefully, because human motives are tangled and these are interpretations rather than certainties. Still, the pattern is striking. Think of how hard, costly achievements, things that take years of effort and sacrifice to attain, serve as believable signals of dedication and ability, precisely because they cannot be faked or rushed. Think of how a difficult, demanding gesture can communicate sincerity in a way that easy words never could. Because the difficulty itself is the proof that the feeling behind it is real. So much of how we read one another's true intentions comes down, quietly, to this. We trust what is expensive to fake. What moves me about this idea lying here in the dark is how it turns waste into meaning. We are taught to admire efficiency, to see all that extravagance as foolishness. And yet here is nature, again and again, building grand and costly and seemingly pointless displays, not by mistake, but because the very pointlessness is the point. The cost is the message. The handicap is the honesty. In a world full of the temptation to deceive, the things that are hard and expensive to do become the things we can finally believe. There is a kind of quiet reassurance in that, when you think about it. In a world where words come cheap and anyone can claim anything, there remains a deep and ancient logic that keeps signals honest. The peacock cannot lie about his health, because the lie would cost him his life. And so beauty, in this strange and lovely way, becomes a form of truth. The most extravagant displays in all of nature are, at heart, simply creatures unable to deceive one another, wearing their honesty in feathers and leaps and impossible splendor. Picture that peacock now, in a clearing at dusk, his great tail unfurled and shimmering in the last light. Not a foolish burden at all, but a banner of pure, unfakeable truth. Every impossible feather, a quiet statement, made in a language older than words. I am strong. I am healthy. I am exactly what I appear to be. And the forest growing dim and still around him, holding its breath at the honesty of so much beauty. There's a pile of money on a table that grows larger every round, and cold logic says you should grab it and walk away on the very first turn. This is one of the most quietly disturbing puzzles in all of game theory because it reveals a gap, a strange and stubborn gap, between what pure reason demands and what real human beings actually do. It is called the centipede game, named for the long, many-legged shape it makes when you draw it out, and it goes something like this. Two players face a small pot of money. On your turn, you have two choices. You can take, ending the game and grabbing the larger share of what is currently on the table, leaving the smaller share for the other player. Or you can pass, and when you pass, the pot grows and the choice moves to the other player. If they pass too, the pot grows again and it comes back to you, larger still. The longer you both keep passing, the bigger the pile becomes, and the more there is for everyone. Cooperation, round after round, makes the whole thing swell. So it seems obvious that you should both keep passing, letting the money grow and share in the bounty at the end. But now follow the cold logic, the way a perfectly rational thinker would, and watch where it leads. Think about the very last round. On that final turn, whoever is choosing knows the game is about to end. There is no future to protect, no next round to nurture. So the rational move on that last turn is simply to take, grabbing the larger share rather than passing it along for nothing. Fine, but now think about the second to last round. The player choosing there can see ahead. They know that if they pass, the other player on the final turn will surely take. So passing would just hand the advantage to the opponent. Better then to take now on the second to last round before the other can. And this reasoning ripples backward, round by round, all the way to the start. Each player looking ahead sees that the other will eventually take, and so concludes they should take first. The cold logic unravels the whole tower of cooperation, step by step, until it reaches the very first move and says simply, take now. End it immediately. Grab the small early pot and walk away. Sit with how strange that conclusion is. Flawless reasoning, each step airtight, leads to walking away on turn one with almost nothing, when patience and trust could have grown the pile into something wonderful for you both. The logic is perfect, and the logic is, in a way, a kind of trap. Now here's the part that brings a small, warm light to the whole thing. When real people play this game, in real experiments, they very often do not follow the cold logic at all. They pass, they cooperate, they let the pot grow, sometimes for many rounds, trusting the other person to keep cooperating too, and very often that trust is rewarded. Real human beings, with all their supposed irrationality, frequently walk away richer than the perfectly rational thinker ever would. What are we to make of that, lying here in the dark? The careful reasoner, following logic to its bitter end, ends up with almost nothing. And the ordinary person, willing to trust a stranger a little, willing to pass the pot along and see what happens, ends up far better off. It suggests that something in our supposed irrationality is not a flaw at all, but a kind of deeper wisdom. That trust, the willingness to cooperate even when cold logic whispers that you should betray, is not foolishness. It is, very often, the thing that lets us reach the larger reward together. There's real debate among thinkers about exactly why people play this way, and it would be dishonest to pretend it is settled. Some say it is trust, plain and simple. Some say we carry habits of cooperation, built for a world of repeated meetings, and we bring them even into one-off games. Some say we simply care about each other, about fairness, about not being the one who grabs and runs. The precise reason is still argued over, but the pattern itself is clear and clearly hopeful. Left to ourselves, most of us are more trusting and more cooperative than cold reason says we should be. And that trust, more often than not, pays off. Perhaps that is the gentle thing to carry towards sleep, that the perfectly logical path is not always the wisest one, that there is a kind of intelligence in trust that no chain of cold reasoning can capture. The pile of money grows only when two people are each willing to pass it along, each willing to believe against the whispering logic that the other will not simply grab it and run. And astonishingly, beautifully, most of the time, they do not. Picture that table now in a quiet pool of light, the small pile of money resting on it, and a hand reaching out not to snatch it away, but to gently pass it on, trusting that it will come back larger, trusting the unseen person on the other side. The pile growing, round by round, built out of nothing but two people, choosing again and again to believe in each other. Two hunters stand at the edge of a silent forest, and a great stag moves somewhere in the trees ahead. They have come out together, these two, and before them lies a choice that will decide whether they eat well tonight or barely at all. Working together, the two of them can bring down the stag, a magnificent animal, enough meat to feed both their families for days. But hunting the stag takes both of them, patient and committed, each holding their position, each trusting the other to stay. If even one of them wanders off, the stag slips away, and the lone hunter who stayed goes home with nothing. There is, however, another option: a hare, a small, quick creature that either hunter can catch entirely on his own with no help from anyone. The hare is a sure thing. It feeds one family modestly, but it requires no trust, no cooperation, no faith in the other person at all. A hunter can break away at any moment, chase down the hare, and be certain of a small meal. This is the stag hunt, an old story turned into one of the deepest puzzles in all of game theory, and it captures something tender and difficult about how we live together. Because the heart of it is not really about deer or rabbits at all. It is about the agonizing relationship between trust and safety. Picture yourself there, in the cold morning, crouched in the brush, waiting for the stag. The great prize is possible, but only if your partner, somewhere off in the trees, also holds their position and waits. And here's the doubt that begins to gnaw at you. What if they don't? What if at this very moment they are growing impatient, or hungry, or afraid that you will abandon them first? What if they break away to chase the hare, leaving you here, alone, waiting for a stag that will now surely escape? If that happens, you go home with nothing at all, while they at least have their rabbit. And so the temptation rises, quiet and reasonable. Perhaps you should take the hare yourself, just to be safe. Not because you want to abandon your partner, but because you cannot be sure of them, and the cost of misplaced trust is going home empty-handed. The safe choice, the lonely choice, begins to look wise. And the terrible thing is that your partner, crouched in their own patch of forest, is very likely thinking exactly the same thoughts about you. This is what makes the stag hunt so different from some other puzzles of cooperation. Here, there is nothing selfish pulling you apart. You would both genuinely prefer to hunt the stag together. Cooperation is what you both truly want, the outcome that is best for each of you. The only thing that can drive you to the lonely hare is doubt. Fear, the simple inability to be certain that the other person will hold their nerve and stay. The whole tragedy, when it comes not from greed but from a failure of trust. And this, in the end, is the quiet truth the stag hunt reveals about so much of human life. So many of the good things we could build together, the great stags of our shared life, require many people to hold their positions at once, to trust that the others will not break away. A shared effort, a common project, a fragile peace, a promise kept by many hands. All of them possible, all of them rich with reward, and all of them resting on the same delicate foundation. The belief that the others will stay when staying is hard. What moves me about this, lying here in the dark, is how it locates the obstacle not in our nature, but in our uncertainty. We are not kept from cooperating by some deep selfishness that makes us want to betray. Often we are kept apart by something gentler and sadder, by doubt, by the fear of being the only one who stayed. We reach for the small safe hare not because we do not dream of the stag, but because we cannot quite believe that the other person dreams of it too, and will hold fast to help us catch it. And that means the thing that unlocks the great prize is something quiet and powerful. It is confidence in one another. It is the slow building of trust through words and habits and shared history, until each hunter can crouch in the brush and feel with real certainty that the other will be there. When that trust is strong, the stag is caught and everyone eats well. The whole magnificent possibility rests on nothing more, Grother, and nothing less than two people believing in each other enough to stay. Perhaps that is the gentle thought to carry into sleep, that the great shared things in life are rarely lost to villainy. They are lost, when they are lost, to doubt, and they are won when they are won by trust. By the simple, difficult, beautiful act of holding your position in the cold forest, believing that somewhere out there in the trees the other person is holding theirs too. Picture that forest now, in the soft gray light of dawn, two hunters, hidden in the brush, each waiting, each trusting, and the great stag stepping out into the clearing, unhurried, while both of them hold perfectly still together, exactly as they promised. On a quiet island, a single sentence spoken aloud changes everything, even though it tells everyone something they already knew. This is one of the most delicious puzzles in all of logic, and to feel its strangeness, you have to step onto the island with me. Imagine a community of people living together, and imagine that among them, some have a particular mark. Let us say their eyes are a certain unusual color, blue. Every person can see everyone else's eyes perfectly well, but there are no mirrors anywhere. And the deepest rule of this community, never broken, is that no one may ever speak to anyone about their own eyes. So each person can count exactly how many blue-eyed people there are among all the others, but no one knows the color of their own eyes. Now there's a strange and solemn custom. If any person ever discovers for certain that their own eyes are blue, they must leave the island the following morning, quietly, alone. For years, perhaps generations, nothing happens. everyone lives in peaceful uncertainty, each seeing the others, none knowing themselves. And then one day a visitor comes, a stranger who knows nothing of the customs, and standing before the gathered community, the visitor says one simple, careless thing. "How interesting," the visitor remarks, "that at least one person here has blue eyes." And then the visitor leaves. Nothing about the world has changed. If there are many blue-eyed people on the island, then every single person there could already see, with their own eyes, that blue-eyed people existed. The visitor has told them nothing new, nothing they did not already plainly see. And yet, that single sentence sets in motion a chain of silent reasoning that days later ends in people leaving the island. How can this be? How can a fact everyone already knew change anything at all? The answer lies in one of the most subtle ideas in all of logic, something called common knowledge. And it is worth unfolding very slowly, here in the quiet. There is a difference, a deep and powerful difference between something that everyone knows and something that everyone knows that everyone knows. Before the visitor spoke, every person could see the blue-eyed islanders. So in a sense, everyone knew that blue eyes existed. But did each person know that everyone else also knew it? And did they know that everyone else knew that they knew it? This tower of knowing about knowing, each layer resting on the one below, had never been completed. It floated unfinished. What the visitor's simple sentence did was extraordinary. It did not add a new fact about the world. It made an old fact public. It placed that fact in the open, in front of everyone at once, so that now, not only did everyone know it, but everyone knew that everyone knew it, and everyone knew that everyone knew that everyone knew it, all the way up, the whole infinite tower suddenly built and solid in a single moment. That is what common knowledge means. Something held not just in every mind separately, but known openly to be held in every mind, so that the knowing becomes shared all the way down. And it is that shared, public, mutual knowing that lets the silent logic begin to turn, each person reasoning about what the others must be reasoning, each waiting and watching, until the careful chain of deduction finally tells some of them with certainty the color of their own eyes. What moves me about this puzzle, lying here in the dark, is what it reveals about the strange power of saying things out loud. We sometimes feel that speaking an obvious truth is pointless, that there is no reason to say what everyone already knows. And yet here is a case where saying the obvious, making it public, completing that tower of mutual knowledge, changes everything. The words carried no new information at all. Their entire power lay in being spoken openly, in front of everyone, so that a private truth became a shared one. And this is not just a puzzle for islands. It points at something true and tender about human life. So much depends not just on what we each privately know, but on what we know together, openly in the light. A feeling that everyone privately holds but no one has spoken can sit silent for years, changing nothing. And then someone says it aloud, and suddenly it is real in a new way, because now everyone knows that everyone knows. The naming, the speaking, the making public is itself an act of great power. It turns a room full of separate private truths into a single shared understanding. There is something quietly profound in that, worth holding as you drift towards sleep. That words can matter not only for the facts they carry, but for the simple act of bringing something into the open between us. So many of the most important moments in a life are exactly this. The thing everyone felt but no one had said, finally spoken. the quiet truth lifted into the shared light where it can finally be known together. Picture that island now, in the soft evening hush, the people going about their lives, each carrying their private knowing, and a single sentence drifting out over them like a bell, not telling them anything new, only making it shared, only lifting what they each knew alone into something they now at last know together. The person who wins the auction is often the one who has just made the biggest mistake. Picture a sealed jar of coins held up before a crowd, and imagine that no one knows exactly how much money is inside. Everyone can look at it, study it, make their best guess. And then everyone writes down a secret bid, and whoever bids the highest wins the jar, paying what they bid. It sounds simple, even fun, but hidden inside it is a trap so reliable that economists gave it a name, the winner's curse. And once you understand it, you will never look at a bidding war quite the same way again. Here's the heart of the trap. Nobody knows the true value of the jar, so everyone is guessing. Some people guess too low, some guess about right, and some guess too high. Now, whose bid wins? Not the person who guessed accurately, not the careful one in the middle. The winner is the person who guessed the highest, which means, very often, the person who most wildly overestimated what was in the jar. The very act of winning is a sign that you, out of everyone, were the most optimistic, the most carried away, the one who saw the most value that wasn't really there. And so you win the jar, and you feel a flush of triumph, and then you open it and count the coins, and your heart sinks. You paid more than it was worth. You won, and in winning, you lost. That is the curse. The prize for being the highest bidder is the quiet discovery that you probably overpaid, precisely because being the highest bidder meant being the most mistaken. Sit with how strange and counterintuitive that is. In most of life, winning is good and losing is bad. But in an auction over something of uncertain value, winning carries a hidden warning. The moment your bid is accepted, you should feel a flicker of doubt, because the fact that no one was willing to go higher than you suggests that everyone else, looking at the same jar, saw less in it than you did. You did not just win the object. You won an argument about its value that no one else wanted to win, and that should give you pause. This is not merely a curiosity about jars of coins. The winner's curse reaches deep into the real world, into all the places where people compete to acquire something whose true worth is uncertain. Companies bidding against each other to buy another company, each estimating its hidden value. The winner often the one who overestimated most. Bidders competing for the rights to drill a piece of land or develop a stretch of ground where no one knows for certain what riches lie beneath, and the winning bid frequently turns out to have been too high. Even in the quieter auctions of everyday life, wherever people bid against one another for something they cannot fully measure, the same shadow falls. To win the fiercest bidding is often to have wanted something more than it deserved. What is the way out, the wisdom hidden in understanding this? It is a kind of humility, a deliberate stepping back. The people who navigate auctions well are the ones who know about the curse and correct for it, who bid a little less than their honest guess, precisely because they understand that winning itself is evidence they may have guessed too high. They build their own doubt into their bid. They protect themselves from the intoxication of competition, from the way the heat of a bidding war can make a thing seem more precious simply because others want it to. And there, perhaps, is the deeper human truth, the one worth carrying into the quiet. So much of what we chase in this life becomes more desirable to us simply because others are chasing it. The competition itself inflames the wanting. We see others reaching for something, and we reach harder. And in the fever of it, we can lose all sense of what the thing was actually worth to us in the first place. The winner's curse is, in its quiet way, a warning about desire itself, about how easily the wanting of a thing can outrun its true value, especially when we are wanting it against other people. There is something almost freeing in understanding this, lying here in the dark. To know that winning is not always winning, that the fiercest competition often inflates the prize beyond its worth, that sometimes the wisest move is to let the bidding pass you by, to watch someone else carry off the jar with their flush of triumph, and to feel quietly the deeper contentment of having known what a thing was really worth to you, and refusing to pay more than that for the mere satisfaction of winning. Picture that jar of coins now, gleaming under the lights, the crowd leaning in, hands raised, voices rising, and one person at the back, calm amid the fever, who has looked at the jar and decided with quiet clarity exactly what it is worth to them, and not a coin more. Watching the bidding climb past that number, letting it go, and carrying home instead of the jar something quieter and worth far more, the peace of a mind that knew its own measure. A goalkeeper facing a penalty kick must do something almost impossible, which is to become truly unpredictable, even to himself. Picture that moment, the ball resting on the spot, the striker stepping back, and the keeper crouched on the line, knowing he has a fraction of a second to choose, left or right, once the ball is struck. The kick is too fast to react to after it is taken. He must commit early, almost guessing. And here's his deepest problem. If he has any pattern at all, any habit, any tendency to favor one side, then a clever striker will learn it and aim the other way. The keeper's predictability would be a door left open. To have any hope, he must dive in a way that not even he could have predicted a moment before. This points to one of the most surprising and beautiful ideas in all of game theory, the strange power of being genuinely random. In certain games, the only good strategy, the only one that cannot be exploited, is to make your choices unpredictable on purpose. Game theorists call this a mixed strategy, and it overturns something we usually believe, the idea that the best players always have a clear, consistent plan. To feel why, think about any game where you and an opponent are locked in a battle of wits, each trying to outguess the other, where what helps you hurts them and what helps them hurts you. The child's game of trying to guess which hand hides the coin, the endless duel between a striker and a keeper, a bluffing moment in a game of cards. In all of these, the worst thing you can possibly be is predictable, because the moment your opponent can guess what you will do, they can counter it perfectly and you lose. Any pattern in your play is a weakness, a crack that a clever opponent will pry open. So what is the answer? It is, astonishingly, to give up on having a fixed plan at all, and instead to deliberately mix your choices according to chance. To play left sometimes and right other times, in a way that has no pattern, that cannot be predicted, that even you do not decide until the last instant. By becoming truly random, you become impossible to outguess. Your opponent can study you forever and learn nothing useful because there is nothing to learn. Where there is no pattern, there is no weakness to exploit. There is a deep mathematical beauty to this, because for many such games there turns out to be a perfect mixture, an exact balance of choices that makes you completely safe from being exploited, no matter how cleverly your opponent plays. A precise blend, so much to the left and so much to the right, that leaves your opponent with no way to gain an edge against you. The perfectly unpredictable player, mixing their choices in just the right proportions, becomes a kind of locked door to which the opponent has no key. And the remarkable thing is that we see this play out in the real world, in exactly the places the theory predicts. When researchers have studied real penalty kicks in professional matches, watching thousands of them, they have found that the best players, the strikers and the keepers, do mix their choices in ways strikingly close to what the mathematics says is ideal, choosing left and right in just about the right proportions, unpredictable in just the right way. No one taught them the equations. They arrived at it through instinct and experience, through years of learning what works, and what works turned out to be exactly the balance the theory describes. The wisdom was in the playing, long before anyone did the math. What moves me about this idea, lying here in the dark, is how it inverts something we usually prize. We tend to admire consistency, reliability, having a clear and steady approach. And in many parts of life, those are virtues. But in the particular dance of outguessing another mind, consistency becomes a liability, and unpredictability becomes a kind of armor. There is a deep strangeness in the thought that sometimes the most rational thing you can do is to surrender your choice to chance, to deliberately not know what you will do so that no one else can know it either. It carries a quiet kind of wisdom about more than games. So much of cleverness, we assume, lies in having the right plan. But here's a corner of the world where the right plan is to have no fixed plan at all, where wisdom means staying light, staying loose, keeping yourself genuinely open so that you cannot be pinned down and predicted. There is a freedom in that, even a kind of grace. The grace of the player who has stopped trying to outthink every move in advance and instead simply trusts the balance of chance to keep them safe. Picture that goalkeeper now, in the hush before the kick, crouched and ready, his mind quiet, not committed to either side, perfectly poised between left and right like a coin spinning in the air before it lands. And in that stillness, in that openness to either path, he is at his strongest, impossible to read, impossible to outguess, waiting in perfect balance for the world to decide. A single dollar is up for auction, and a room full of sensible people are about to bid far more than $1 to win it. This sounds impossible, and yet it happens again and again in a famous and slightly cruel little game called the dollar auction. The setup is simple, but it hides a trap that has caught even the wisest among us. A single dollar bill is offered to the highest bidder. Ordinary so far. But there is one extra rule, one small twist that changes everything. The person who comes in second, the runner-up, must also pay their final bid, and they get nothing for it. Watch how the trap springs. At first it looks like free money. Someone bids a penny for a whole dollar, a wonderful deal. But someone else thinks, why not bid 2 cents, still a bargain. The bidding climbs cheerfully, a nickel, a dime, a quarter, everyone still chasing what looks like easy profit. And then the bids approach $1, and something quiet and terrible begins to happen. Imagine you have bid 90 cents, and someone else has bid 95. You are now about to lose. If the auction ends here, you will pay your 90 cents and receive nothing at all because you are the runner-up. So you think, fast and reasonably, better to bid $1. If I win the dollar for $1, I break even, and that is far better than paying 90 cents for nothing. So you bid $1. But now the other person, who bid 95, faces the very same logic. They are about to lose 95 cents for nothing. So they bid $1.05, choosing to lose only 5 cents rather than 95. And you, now facing the loss of your full dollar, find it reasonable to bid $1.10 to cut your losses. And on it climbs past the dollar, past all cents, 2 people bidding more and more for a single dollar bill, each one trapped by the same desperate reasoning. This is the dreadful engine at the heart of the dollar auction. Each individual step is perfectly reasonable. At every moment, bidding a little more looks better than accepting the loss of what you have already committed. And yet those reasonable steps, strung together, carry both players into pure madness, paying $5, $10, sometimes far more, for a single dollar that only one of them will win, while both of them bleed. What has trapped them is one of the most human of all mistakes, the pull of what is already spent. Once you have put 90 cents on the line, the thought of losing it for nothing becomes unbearable. And so you throw good money after bad, trying to rescue what is already gone. The money you have already bid is lost either way, but it does not feel lost, and that feeling drags you deeper. Each step you take to avoid accepting the loss only enlarges the loss you will eventually have to accept. This pattern has a reach far beyond a parlor game, and that is what makes it worth understanding. It is the same logic that traps people in so many costly escalations, where the very fact of having already invested so much becomes the reason to invest still more. A conflict that drags on, each side unwilling to stop, because stopping would mean all the previous sacrifice was for nothing, and so the sacrifice only grows. A failing project that swallows more and more resources because abandoning it would mean admitting that everything poured in so far was wasted. The trap is always the same shape. We refuse to accept a loss, and in refusing, we make it larger. The way out, when you can find it, is a kind of clarity that feels almost cold, but is actually wise. It is the willingness to look at what you have already spent and let it go, to recognize that it is gone, regardless of what you do next, and to decide your next step based only on what lies ahead, not on what is already behind you. The person who can do this, who can accept a small loss cleanly rather than chasing it into a larger one, has learned something difficult and valuable. They have learned how to step out of the spiral before it closes around them. What stays with me about this, lying here in the dark, is how the dollar auction reveals that our undoing is not always foolishness. The people who bid $5 for one are not stupid. They are reasoning carefully at every single step. It is the chain of careful reasoning itself, each link sound, that leads them off the edge. There is a humbling lesson in that we can be led astray not by abandoning logic, but by following a certain narrow logic too faithfully, step by step, without ever lifting our eyes to see the cliff that all those reasonable steps are carrying us toward. And so the deepest wisdom here may be the ability to pause, to step back from the next small reasonable move, and ask where the whole staircase is leading, to see the trap from above rather than from inside it. Because once you can see the shape of the dollar auction, you can decline to play it, or you can stop cleanly early and walk away having lost only a little, while others bid themselves into ruin. Picture that room now, the auction quiet at last, the dollar bill resting on the table, untaken. And one person who saw the trap for what it was, who set down their hand early, who chose to lose a dime rather than chase into the dark, walking out into the cool evening air, lighter, freer, carrying the quiet satisfaction of the one who knew when to stop. The same game that breeds betrayal when played once breeds cooperation when played forever. This is one of the most hopeful discoveries in all of game theory, and it turns on a single, quiet thing: the shadow of the future. Take a game where played a single time between strangers, cold logic points toward betrayal, where each person, looking only at this one encounter, does best by acting selfishly. Played once, it can end in mutual betrayal, two people each grasping for advantage and both ending up worse for it. But change one thing. Let the two people know that they will meet again and again and again, on into an open future with no certain end, and something remarkable happens. Cooperation, which made no sense in a single meeting, suddenly becomes the wise and rational choice. To feel why, imagine you are dealing with someone not once, but over and over, day after day, with no end in sight. Today you could betray them, snatch some small advantage. But if you do, they will remember. Tomorrow they will not trust you. They may betray you in return, and the day after, and every day to come. That one moment of selfishness would poison the whole long future of your dealings together. And so, weighed against all the tomorrows, the small prize of betraying today looks suddenly worthless. It is far better, far wiser, to cooperate now, to build trust, to earn the steady ongoing reward of working together across all those repeated meetings. This is the deep magic of what game theorists call repeated games, and the key to all of it is that open, uncertain future stretching ahead. When you know you will meet someone again, your behavior today is no longer a single isolated act. It becomes a message, a promise, an investment in everything still to come. The future reaches back into the present and changes what it is wise to do right now. Betrayal, which can win in a single moment, becomes foolish when there are endless moments still ahead, because the cost of being known as a betrayer outlasts any prize betrayal could win. And here lies the answer to a question that might otherwise haunt us. If cold logic so often points toward selfishness, how did cooperation ever arise among living things at all? How did trust and decency and the keeping of promises ever get a foothold in a world that seems on paper to reward betrayal? The answer, in large part, is the shadow of the future. We do not live in single encounters. We live among the same faces, the same neighbors, the same community, meeting one another again and again across the long unfolding of our lives. And in that endlessly repeated game, cooperation is not naive at all. It is the smart strategy. It is what works. There is a condition, and honesty requires naming it, because it matters. This magic depends on the future feeling real and open, on the players caring about the tomorrows and not knowing when or whether the meetings will end. If two people know for certain that this is the very last time they will ever deal with each other, the shadow of the future vanishes, and with it, much of the reason to cooperate. The pull toward trust comes precisely from the sense that more is coming, that the relationship stretches onward, that today is not the end, it is the openness of the future, its uncounted tomorrows that civilizes the present. What moves me about this, lying here in the dark, is how it reframes the very foundation of trust between people. We sometimes imagine that cooperation must rest on pure goodness, on people being selfless enough to set their own interests aside. But the repeated game shows something gentler and more durable. That cooperation can grow even among self-interested beings, simply because they share a future. That trust is not only a matter of virtue, but a matter of time, of knowing that we will meet again, and that how we treat each other today will echo through all the days to come. And there is something quietly beautiful in that, something worth carrying towards sleep. So much of what makes us decent to one another, the promises we keep, the small kindnesses, the patient fairness, may rest on this simple foundation, that we are not passing strangers but people bound together across time. The shadow of the future falls over our every dealing, gently reminding us that we will see each other tomorrow and the day after, and that the trust we build today is the ground we will both stand on then. It is, in the end, our shared tomorrows that teach us how to treat each other today. Picture two people now who have known each other a long time and who expect to know each other a long time still. Sitting together in the evening quiet, trusting each other easily without even thinking about it, because the long road behind them and the long road ahead have woven them together. The shadow of the future resting softly over them both, not as a threat, but as a kind of warmth, the simple certainty that there will be a tomorrow and that they will meet in it as friends. There may be a quiet mathematical truth hidden beneath all our striving, one that says almost any way of living together, including deep and lasting cooperation, can hold, if only the future matters enough to us. This is one of the most profound results in all of game theory, and it carries a name that sounds almost like a folk tale, the Folk Theorem. It earned that name because the idea floated among mathematicians for years, passed along and widely believed, before anyone formally wrote it down, the way an old story is known by everyone, long before it is ever printed. And what it says is gentle and sweeping and strange. Recall softly the puzzle that haunts so much of this field. In many situations, when people meet just once, cold logic points toward selfishness, toward each person grasping for their own advantage and everyone ending up worse for it. It can seem from that single snapshot as though betrayal is written into the very mathematics of life, as though cooperation were a fragile and unnatural thing. But the Folk Theorem lifts its eyes from the single meeting to the long horizon of many meetings, to relationships that stretch on, and there it finds something wonderful. Here's the heart of it, unfolded slowly. When people interact not once but over and over, across an open future with no fixed end, the range of stable outcomes blooms enormously. It is no longer true that selfishness is the only rational resting place. In a relationship that continues, where each person cares about all the tomorrows still to come, a vast range of arrangements can become stable, can hold steady, including rich and full cooperation in which everyone does far better than cold short-term logic would ever allow. The future, in other words, opens a door that the single moment kept shut. Why does the long horizon change so much? Because when the future matters, behavior today can be held gently in place by what will follow. In a continuing relationship, people can sustain cooperation through the simple understanding that kindness will be met with kindness, and betrayal would cost them the long stream of rewards still ahead. The shadow of all those tomorrows reaches back and steadies the present, making it possible for self-interested beings to settle stably into patterns of working together. Cooperation stops being naive. It becomes one of the natural resting places of a relationship that endures. Now, honesty matters here, and the Folk Theorem is honest in a way that is worth holding carefully. It does not promise that cooperation will happen. It says that cooperation can be stable, that it is one of the many outcomes the mathematics permits when the future matters enough. It widens the door without pushing us through it. Many arrangements are possible, the beautiful and the bleak alike, and which one a group of people actually settles into depends on history, on trust, on the stories they tell, and the habits they build. The theorem does not hand us cooperation. What it hands us is something subtler and, in its way, more precious. It tells us that cooperation is not forbidden by the cold logic of the world. That widespread trust and mutual flourishing are not naive dreams ruled out by mathematics, but real possibilities, woven into the very structure of repeated life, available to us if the future matters enough and we can find our way to them together. And that, when you let it settle over you, is a deeply reassuring thing, because it means the gloomy snapshot, the single meeting where betrayal seems to win, was never the whole truth. It was only a fragment, a frozen instant, torn out of the long flowing river of our dealings with one another. Step back and let the river flow, let the meetings repeat across the open future, and the mathematics itself makes room for trust, for cooperation, for all of us doing well together. The deep logic of the world does not condemn us to selfishness. It leaves the door to cooperation standing quietly open. What moves me about this, lying here in the dark, is how it returns us at the very end to hope, and grounds that hope not in wishful thinking, but in mathematics itself. We are so often told that the world is a hard and selfish place, that to expect cooperation is to be naive. And here, at the deepest level of the theory, in one of its most celebrated results, we find that this is simply not so. That cooperation is not an illusion, not a fragile exception forever doomed to collapse, but a stable and natural possibility, written into the logic of any world where beings meet again and again and care about what is to come. So perhaps this is the gentlest and truest thing to carry with you as you drift towards sleep. That the trust you place in others is not foolishness. That the cooperation you build, the promises you keep, the patient kindness you offer across the long, repeated days of your life, all of it rests on solid ground. The mathematics is on the side of working together. The future, if we let it matter, bends quietly toward cooperation. And in the deep structure of things, beneath all the betrayals that can flare up in single moments, there lies a quiet and abiding possibility of trust, woven into the very logic of the cosmos. Picture it now, soft and wide. Countless beings across countless meetings, each small choice to cooperate adding to the next, trust building upon trust like light gathering in a vast and gentle dawn. Not forced, not guaranteed, simply possible, simply open, a quiet truth resting at the bottom of everything. That we were always free to find our way to one another. That working together was woven into the world all along. And so we come to the end of our long, quiet journey through the hidden logic of choice. If you are still awake, still drifting here with me in the dark, I am glad of the company. We have wandered together through prisoners and peacocks, through silent forests and crowded streets, through the strange and beautiful mathematics that runs beneath trust and betrayal, beneath every choice you have ever made. And if much of it has slipped past you into sleep, that is perfectly all right. The ideas were never meant to be held tightly. They were meant to be drifted through, like soft lights seen from a moving train, like stars wheeling slowly overhead. If sleep has not yet found you, there are other journeys waiting, other long, quiet explorations of the wonders of this universe, ready to carry you gently down into rest whenever you are ready for them. But there is no hurry now, nothing left to do, nothing left to solve. So let the last of the day's thoughts loosen and fall away. Let your breathing slow. Let the great, gentle logic of the cosmos hold you, the same quiet mathematics that lets strangers find each other, that lets trust grow in a hard world, that bends in the end toward working together. You are a small, warm point of awareness, resting in an enormous and patient universe, and there is nothing you need to do tonight but rest. Sleep now, my friend. Sleep deeply and sleep well, and may your dreams be soft and wide and kind among the quiet turning of the stars.